Hey everybody, welcome back to No More, No Less. I'm Michael Chikeen, and today with me in the studio, I have with me Dr. Donald Dutton. Donald has a PhD in psychology from the University of Toronto. He is currently Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of British Columbia. He spent 15 years providing therapy for court-mandated men convicted of wife assault and developed a psychological model for perpetrators of intimate abuse. He has published over 100 papers and 5 books, including The Domestic Assault of Women, The Batterer, a Psychological Profile, and The Abusive Personality. Dr. Dutton has frequently served as an expert witness in criminal and civil trials involving domestic abuse and family violence, including his work for the prosecution of O.J. Simpson in 1995. Now, seeing as today's conversation might get a little heavy, I'd like to throw out a warning to anyone listening who may have been a victim or witness of abuse, because we're gonna tackle that head on. So that said, let's dive in. Dr. Dutton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And Don Sutton, by the way, was a pitcher for the LA Dodgers.
I actually looked it up earlier because I kept saying it when I was practicing the intro, and I'm like, why does that sound so familiar?
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here, and I guess let's start really from the beginning, a bit of an origin story, because spending so many years researching such a topic that is rife with so much emotion and so much gravity. How did you find your way there?
Boy, I don't know if I found it or it found me. It was happenstance. It happened like this. My first sabbatical leave from UBC, which was 1974, a professor that I'd had in graduate school at the University of Toronto was out in BC, and he had the job of updating the criminal justice system in the province, updating police training mainly. And so he gave me the job of sort of finding out which areas of their job police felt least prepared to do. And it came back unanimously. It was domestic disturbances. They hated it. They said, well, I don't know why they're even having us do this stuff. I mean, it's social work. People are all upset, and it's not clear who the perpetrator is, and why are we doing it? So the very first thing I did was to devise a training system for police on how to, more safely and more effectively intervene in domestic disturbance calls, which I did. And that being done, and with a number of options at the end in terms of what they did. And arrest was not at that time a high priority, strangely enough, because you look back now and it's become a high priority. But at that time, there were a number of options in terms of how they could make a referral, what they could do with it. So one of the options became arrest, and that meant the courts were going to be involved. And the courts didn't know what to do with it either. So I had just come back from doing a group therapy training at a place called Cold Mountain. And I got together with a guy called Dale Trimble, and who also had gone through the same training. And we decided group therapy for the men, and it was all focused on men in those days, would be a great idea. You get 12 or 14 guys in the room all at once. It's very efficient. They can learn from each other. You learn to play with the process of the group. So we started doing that. We offered a court-mandated option, and the courts loved it and started referring everybody to us, including, I must say, men where the least problem in their lives was the fact that they'd once been assaulted with their wife. It was a question in some cases where the guys were even going to make it in the next week or not. They had drug problems and substance abuse, identity, all kinds of financial, you name it, all problems. So we started doing that. And to make a long story short, being a research psychologist, I got interested in what makes these guys tick. How can you wind up hitting somebody that you loved and married? I mean, it seems paradoxical. So those are the kind of questions that always grabbed me as a psychologist, the ones that had no immediate answer and seemed really complicated. I started to do research on these guys, and I wound up publishing a lot of this research and compiling it in a book called The Abusive Personality that looked at the whole development of abusiveness across the lifespan. And then later on, we took these psychological principles and applied them to women and found out the same kind of things predicted abusiveness in women as well. That was not popular because the prevailing view at that time was that only men were abusive in intimate relationships.